Hi, my name is Sean Jacobs here at Protected Trust, and today I'd like to talk a little bit about a new feature in Office 365 called Attack Simulation Training. Like many organizations, you're probably aware that phishing is a huge problem on the internet these days. And in your company, you may be looking for a way to gauge whether or not your users are likely to fall for phishing attempts. For many years now, there's been third-party services that offered methods to perform phishing and training tests for companies. But now, Microsoft is offering their own solution for that called Attack Simulation Training. Attack Simulation Training is part of Microsoft Defender for Office 365 and is available with Defender for Office 365 Plan 2 or Microsoft 365 E5/A5 security. In order to access Attack Simulation Training, we would go to security.microsoft.com, which is the newer Microsoft security portal where a lot of these features are being moved. So in the security portal, we would want to, under the email and collaboration heading here, we would select Attack Simulation Training. And that'll take us into the Attack Simulation Training interface, where we can view kind of like an overview of our different attack simulations, some of the reporting information, and so on. So in this tenant, we can see that we've already performed some attack simulations in the past. We can see, that a number of our users have not actually experienced the simulation, so those users have not opened and interacted with an email that they've received via a phishing attempt from Attack Simulation Training. At this point, none of the users in the organization have completed training. There's users that are less susceptible to phishing, so users that have clicked on a phishing or interacted with a phishing message in the past have not interacted with newer messages, and so on. And we'll kind of talk about the reports here in a little bit. So in Attack Simulation Training, we have what are called the simulations. And the simulations are essentially those emails that we're sending to the users to simulate a phishing attack. I'm going to walk through creating a simulation real quick. So in order to create a new simulation, we select Launch a Simulation. We select what type of simulation we want to perform. So there's a number of different techniques that are available, and each of those techniques come with different types of payloads, and we'll talk about the payloads in a minute. So in this case, I'm just going to select Credential Harvest because it's the simplest one. And it's one of the, I like the Credential Harvest because the idea behind a Credential Harvest is the users are presented with an email that, something entices them to click on something within that email, which takes them to a website where it's asking them to enter credentials. So, and it's definitely something we don't want users to do. We don't want a user to just click on a random link within an email and enter their credentials on some random web page. So it's a good technique to use in order to gauge a user's whether or not a user might be willing to give up their credentials easily. Some other types that are here are malware attachments, link attachments. So those would be emails that get sent that contain an attachment, and the user opens that attachment and does something, like maybe just opening the attachment. If it contained malware, that would be a bad idea. Sometimes there's an attachment. That attachment contains a link that takes them to a web page that contains malicious information. Link to malware, same kind of idea. Within the email, there's a link, and that link takes the user to malware. Or the drive-by URL, which is a method that would, when a user clicks on a link, similar to the link to malware, but the idea is it takes them to a website, and that website itself has something that can potentially compromise the machine. So each one of these different techniques will have a list of payloads that are associated with them, and we'll talk about the payloads here in a second. So in this case, we're going to use credential harvest. I'm going to say next. I'm going to call it attack simulation 5, since it's the 5th one that I've performed. In the next option, we select the payload that we're going to use. We do have the option to create a payload here, but we'll talk about that in a little bit. In this case, though, we can see there are a number of payloads that are available for this, simulation type. So in this case, I'm going to just select the one for, we're going to say update your Office 365 security. You'll see when we select that, so if I don't click on it, if I actually select it, it's going to show us an example of the email that actually gets sent to the user and provides us with some information about this simulation, like what kind of information it captures, things about like what the theme is and how it's branded, what industry it's based in. And the idea behind this is in those simulations, we can actually filter things by these different types of features. We can also see if we've launched any simulations using this, if we've launched any simulations using this payload in the past, we can see that, you know, a list of simulations that have been launched. In this case, this one hasn't been used yet in the tenant, so I'm just going to close that. The filtering that I was talking about, you'll see in many places, especially when we're talking about the payloads, there's going to be a filter button there, and that filter lets us go in and filter things by those different types of categories. So if we were looking for things like, you know, hey, I wanted to do a credit card based filter, then we could say, okay, we're going to do American Express and, you know, Capital One perhaps. So these are handy if we're wanting to target users, you know, specifically by, you know, certain types of payloads. So we also have things in here like, you know, current event or controversial. The current event ones are really helpful because, for example, if we filter it by current event, you'll see there's probably things related to events that are going on right now, such as, that filter didn't stick. Current event, yes. Apply, didn't hit apply. So we can see that there's a payload out here about sale of FFP2 masks. So it's probably, you know, an email that's related to, you know, something that's coronavirus related. So it's, you know, it's somebody selling masks, and apparently this one's in a language that I don't read. So that one's not very helpful to me in general. So, but the filtering's nice because you can go in and actually filter things. And once you go in and start creating your own payloads or automatically capturing your own payloads, this can become very helpful to help you, you know, go in and organize or actually, you know, find the specific payload that you're looking for. So let me apply that, go back to the one that I was talking about. Did I already have it selected? Oh, let me turn off that filter. Where was the one that I had selected already? Do I already have it selected? No, I already have it selected. Okay. Target users would be which users within your organization that you want to target with this attack. If you want, you can say, you know, include all the users in my organization, and that will include every user in your organization. If you wanted to, you could also only send this simulation to certain users within your organization. And you'll see when you select add user, you can actually select things by, you know, by city and by department and by title. So if you wanted to perform a simulation against your, you know, your sales team or your HR team, then you could go in and actually filter the users by those categories. In this case, though, I just want to send it to everybody. So I'm going to say include all users. One of the nicest features about the attack simulation training, in my opinion, is the fact that you can assign training. This is one of the newer things that's been added to this feature, and I'm very, very happy with it because you can automatically assign training when a user fails a campaign. So you send a simulation to a user, and the user clicks on the link, and they give up their credentials. You can have attack simulation training automatically assign them a training, and Microsoft provides the courses and everything. It's a very, very handy feature. So in this case, I'm just going to allow Microsoft to assign the training for me. And due date, I want to provide a due date for when the training has to be performed. So in this case, I'll say 15 days after simulation ends. So that way, when a user fails, or actually when we create the training, we specify here in the launch details in a second how long that simulation is going to be performed. And then once the simulation is complete, the users will have 15 more days to complete the training. Okay, so I'm going to say next. Since we're allowing Microsoft to assign the training, we do have the option of specifying any kind of custom information for the training landing page. So when the user clicks on the link and they give up their credentials, Microsoft basically redirects them to a website that says, here's what you did wrong. So, in the web page, it will show them the email that they should have detected as phishing, and they did not. It will show them the things that they missed. So, maybe this sender, maybe something like, this sender isn't actually somebody within your organization. But if you want, you can actually customize, the header and the body of that message. So if you wanted to say something less nice than what this, the default settings are, you could. But in general, I quite like the settings that Microsoft provides. When we say next, we can specify when that simulation is going to be performed and for how long we're going to allow the simulation to run. So in this case, for this example, I'm going to tell it to go ahead and launch the simulation as soon as I'm done. But excuse me. But if we wanted, we could also schedule that simulation to be run at a later date. We can also specify whether we want the simulation to run for 2 days or 7 days. 2 days is usually pretty good, but it depends on maybe the size of your organization. Maybe we want to spread out those messages over 7 days instead of 2 days. But in this case, I'm going to tell it just to launch it now and say next. We can review the simulation to decide, if we want to change anything else. I apparently applied that mask payload, and that's not what I wanted to do. Let me go back and do that. So, which one was it in here? We'll just do the messages not delivered. How about that one? Sure, that one looks good. Okay, so, and let me do next again. So, okay, so we're using the messages not delivered. This is the name. If we want, we can send a test message. The test message is helpful. Sometimes we'll basically just send a single message to the user, which we're logged in as right now. I'm pretty confident it's going to get in, so I'm not going to bother with a test. And then we submit. You'll see once we hit the submit button, it takes a few minutes to actually submit. Sometimes it takes a few minutes, sometimes it's really quick. So Let's let that complete real quick. So now it's scheduled for launch. So that simulation will begin running within a few minutes. In this case, we can see it's going to 27 users within this organization. And if we really need to, we can go in. So before it actually launches, it's going to launch at 2:23 p.m., which was 1 minute ago. So it's probably too late to do any editing. But if we had scheduled it at some point in the future, we can go edit a simulation before it actually launches. And that's it. Now that simulation is in progress. We can see, it's in progress. Here's the payload that we're using. It probably hasn't actually gone out to any users yet, but we can check in on that here in a few minutes. So back on the topic of the payloads, there are, like I said, there are a number of payloads that are already added to the system. And new payloads get added to the system on a fairly regular basis. And you have the ability to create your own payloads. So, for example, if you have, like, so in the past, something that I do, because, I deal with phishing on a relatively frequent basis, I kind of have a collection of interesting phishing emails that I've received in the past. So, like, as that IT guy within my company, my boss occasionally will send me an email that says, here was a good one, here's one that I almost clicked on, that kind of thing. So I kind of have a folder where I've just collected phishing emails over time, just so I can refer back to them for attack simulations. And if I wanted to, I can go in and create my own payloads using those emails. So I actually have an example here of one that I've used in the past, which is an unfortunately kind of really sneaky one. So this one almost exactly duplicates a Microsoft quarantine notification. So, it's pretending to be a user from the company, or this one is, so this one's coming from the HR department, this one's coming from the CFO. Of course I want to go in and review this email that got blocked for some reason from the CFO that has important tax year information. So this email, to create this HTML file, I basically just copied information from an email. So in the HTML code, I would just go in and edit. I apologize for the coughing. Edit the email address and maybe the subject of the email and the date that the emails were sent and so on. So, which is kind of handy that you can do that, but it's not entirely necessary. It's helpful if you wanted to create your own simulations, especially if you wanted to be sneakier than some of the default messages are. Though some of the default messages are really, really good in my opinion. So in any case, to create that payload, we would select create a payload. We're going to create an email payload. Select what technique we want to use. This one's definitely a credential harvest because we're going to redirect a user to what looks like an Office 365 login page, but it's not on an Office 365 domain. I'm going to call it, Microsoft Quarantine Notification Custom. And we'll just call this the sample payload. Sender's name. If we wanted to be really sneaky, we could enter this as, something that looks very, very legitimate. So maybe this is quarantine at For the phishing link, you want to select a URL that you want to be your phishing link. And this is a bunch of non-Office 365 domains that Microsoft, owns these domains and uses them specifically for attack simulations. So maybe we wanted to use like officentry.com. And to help with that filtering later on, we might want to go in and actually specify, information about, what the theme and the brand and the industry and whether or not it's a current event and whether or not it's controversial. And that would help us, find this using the filtering features later on. You have an import email button where you can just you can basically just browse to an email that you've received. So if you have that folder like I do of emails that have been sent to you from your boss or the CEO or whatever, you can just import directly from an email. But in this case, I'm actually going to paste the code. So in this case, you could use this to just create, or in this case, since I've already got the code in a text file, I'm just going to go and copy the code that I've already edited it. You do have the option of replacing all links in this email with the phishing link. And that's it. That should be all we need to do. All right, the indicators are that neat thing that I was talking about. So when a user clicks on a message after they've received, so once you send a simulation to a user and they click on it and they log in, it takes them to that web page that tells them what they did wrong. The indicators are the method that you use to create those things that show them what they did wrong. So we're going to add an indicator. And we may say something like, mimics a work or business process. And we're going to say the indicator location is from the body of the email. And in the select text, you see it takes us to our code, and this is probably the least helpful part of this. But if I wanted to say maybe I want to highlight, the email address for that flag. So I'm going to find, and I'm going to highlight that text. So we're going to say that's the text that we're going to apply that flag to. And that's that. And then once you click in here, it's going to show you this is what that indicator is going to look like. So here's the text that gets added to it. Here's the text that is going to be highlighted with that indicator. And that's what it's going to look like. If you want, you can add more than one indicator to a message. For this example, I'm just going to do the one. So then we have the option to review the payload. This is what it looks like. There's that little highlight. There's the pop out. And that's pretty much what it'll look like when they get to the page that hopefully they don't go to. But so it's a really handy feature. Now that I'm finished with this, I'm just going to submit. And now that once it does it show? Yeah, it's submitting right now. Once that finishes submitting, then I will have a new payload that I can use for phishing attacks in the future. So I believe those normally show up at the very bottom. So yeah. So we can see there's the Microsoft Quarantine Notification custom that we just created. And those, if we go in and look at the filtering, you have the source of global or tenant here. The tenant source are the ones that you've created within your tenant. So these are basically either ones that you've collected through automations, or that you've created manually. Okay. On the topic of automations, you can create automations to automatically harvest payloads from emails that your users have submitted as phishing. So, for example, if your company regularly receives like spear phishing attacks where somebody's impersonating a user within your company, trying to convince other users to do things. And if your users are already pretty good and they are, reporting those messages as phishing, you can actually create an automation to collect those messages. So, I'm going to create an example just for spear phishing. And run conditions, these would be basically the conditions that must be met for an email to be collected. So, for example, if we were looking for emails with the specific sender's name, maybe our CEO is Bob Smith. Okay, so if the sender is equal to Bob Smith and a user submits that message as a phishing message, then that email that the user submitted will automatically be collected by the attack simulation training, and it will automatically create a payload based off of that email that the user submitted. It's a pretty handy feature, and that's an interesting way, and a very simple way to automatically populate those payloads in the future so that you can use them against other users within your organization. Also, here in the settings, you can see things like the repeat offender threshold. If you have users that are repeat offenders, what this allows you to do is set a threshold in which that user will be considered a repeat offender. The default is 2. So if you, for example, if you have a user that fails 2 phishing simulations, then they will be considered a repeat offender. And the reporting for repeat offenders will include those users. You also have the ability to enable the user training reminders. And the user training reminders, so when a user fails a campaign or fails a phishing simulation, they will be directed to perform training. If they don't immediately perform that training, if they don't complete the training at the point in which they fail, then enabling this feature will allow Microsoft to send that user reminders that they need to complete the training. And the training is very important, not only to educate the end user, but of course, the training that appears in your reporting too, so you can actually see whether or not the users that have been assigned training are completing it or not. So very, very handy feature to enable the user training reminders. And that's kind of like a quick overview of, the attack simulator itself. If we want to go looking at the reports that get created, there's several different types of reports like simulation coverage, training completion, repeat offender, and so on. Anytime you click on one of these reports, it's going to take you to the report section of attack simulation training, where you actually have the tabs here for, excuse me, each of those reports. So we can see our training efficacy report, which shows us things like, the simulations that have been performed in the past. And we can see, like, for example, actually, they look to me to be out of order. I don't know if I actually created them out of order. I don't think I did, though. In any case, we can see that Oh, they're arranged by, nope, it's not date either. I don't know. Maybe that's something I need to look into. Anyway, so we can see for each of the simulations that there was a predicted compromised rate and an actual compromise rate. So the predicted compromise rate is what Microsoft thinks the average percentage would be of people that fail that simulation. So they actually fall for that simulation. And so you can actually see, whether or not your users are doing better than Microsoft thinks they should be. The predicted compromise rate also, like for those simulations and those payloads that you've created on your own, they'll automatically receive the predicted compromise rate based on their history. So once you use that payload in a simulation, if 10% of your company, actually falls for it, then at that point on, the predicted compromise rate for that payload is going to be 10%. So user coverage allows you to see what users within your organization have been included in simulations, whether or not they've clicked, whether or not they've been compromised. So we can see, this user has actually been included in 4 simulations so far. They've clicked one time during a simulation and they were compromised one time. So this user actually provided their credentials to the attack simulation training. If we look in training completion, the training completion report will actually show us a list of users that have been assigned with training. So they received a simulation, they fell for it, they clicked on something they shouldn't have, they were assigned training, and we can see, like in this organization right now, we've got 2 users that have not yet performed the training that they were assigned. So right now we can see they're both incomplete. So, and we can see what trainings they've been assigned, and if we want, we can select this and we can actually see, what trainings they've actually performed. So in this case, this user has completed one training, but hasn't completed the other. And since we turned on that feature to send them reminders, maybe this user will not forget now that they have training to complete. Repeat offenders. If you have repeat offenders, this will provide you a list of the users in your organization that are repeat offenders. And that's pretty much it. It's a very, very handy feature for performing tests to see how well your users are at not falling for phishing attempts. One other thing that I wanted to talk about is the end user experience for users that have received attack simulations. So I'm going to log in just as just a random user within my organization here. And this user should have received messages in the past. Okay, so here, for example, is the one that we sent just a little while ago. So here's that attack simulation that we just sent a few minutes ago. And I obviously haven't logged in as this user yet, so let me close that. Okay, so I'm going to do what you shouldn't do, but what the user may do. And I'm actually going to click that link that I shouldn't. You'll notice when we do this, I got redirected to an Office 365 login page because this phishing campaign is trying to capture users' credentials. One thing that you may also notice is that this definitely is not an Office 365 domain. That's not some place that a user should be logging in with their 365 credentials. In this case, I'm just going to log in as the user. And you'll see after they do so, they get redirected to that page based on the information that we created. So we can see, Diego just got phished. It's okay, you're human. Let's learn from this. We mentioned when we were creating that payload a little while ago about the flags that the users get shown when they get phished, and this is what those look like. And then down at the bottom of that message is the go-to training. So they select that link, and it should redirect the user to a training campaign. Or assignment, rather. So redirects the user to the training assignment. So we'll see here in just a second. So, and this is the beginning of the training. And then the trainings themselves are actually really simple. They only take a few minutes. You know, the user starts the training, they go through the training, and, you know, we watch the nice little thing, we answer a few questions, they get to the end of that, and then they've completed the training. Very, very handy feature. Quite like it. And that's pretty much the attack simulation training in Office 365. I like it a lot. I'm very, very happy with this feature. It's something that's been needed in Office 365 for a long time, in my opinion. And they've been working on it, and it's finally at a point now where I'm very excited about it. And that's pretty much it. Have a great day.